Welcome back to these series of lectures. Last time we talked about the middle ground, the strengths and weaknesses of the Indians and the French, more specifically the Jesuit priest. We're going to continue this discussion by talking about how the middle ground operates with four distinct institutions: trade, justice, sex, and war. We'll start with trade. The Huronians and the French fur traders, they don't calculate value the same way. French fur traders determine value based on the market or supply and demand, like we do today. The Indians, on the other hand, believe that commodities have an inherent value that does not change. This is going to create problems. French fur traders may offer 5 crates of European manufactured goods for a pallet of beaver pelts in January when it's cold. There's a high demand for beaver pelts. And yet in August, they may offer 1 crate instead of 5 for the same pallet of beaver pelts. To the Indians, this looks like fraud, or so it looks like the Europeans are trying to cheat them, trying to take advantage of their trading relationship, and it causes problems. In time, the French will simply leave out X amount of stuff for the Indians to take. The problem is that the Indians believe they're being cheated, so they'll break into French stores to take stuff to balance out that exchange. Well, the French, instead of having to deal with constant theft, decide that maybe it would be better to provide the Indians with a gratuity, a tip. This prevents break-ins, this prevents continual strife and anger and conflict between the two sides. So you can see the middle ground operating a bit here in the institution of trade. We can see it also with justice. All societies of any size have institutions of justice. The Indians and the French do not see justice or do not carry out justice in the same way. For the French, as for us today, we depend upon an impartial, faceless, nameless bureaucracy to handle issues of justice, the apprehension of a criminal, the incarceration, the trial, the imprisonment of a criminal. These are all done by people that you don't know and may never meet. The Indians regard this as very strange. The Indians say that when one of ours has been killed by one of yours, then it's our business to administer justice, not some faceless bureaucracy, but the victim's family. Now, this can lead to complications, obviously. The Indians also have another concept here that's interesting and worth bringing up. They call it covering the dead. And it works like this. Let's say I'm a French fur trader and I'm with my Indian trading partner. We get into an argument over the value of the beaver pelts, and I get so aggravated with him that I whack him over the head and kill him. Now, the Indians may take blood revenge, or they may demand that the French cover the dead. That is, give to the Indians one of ours, one of our children, to take the place of the one we've killed. They'll raise the European as an Indian in their society and their culture. Covering the dead. This, of course, is difficult for Westerners because of our emphasis on the individual. Of course, not all societies place emphasis on the individual. Some societies place the emphasis on the larger community. So it's a difficult concept for Westerners to get their head around, but it is one worth considering. So we see here in the issues of justice, we have to sort of accommodate the Indian desire to be a part of this process while retaining that sort of impartiality that we see in Western conventions. Sex. I mentioned last time that the Jesuit priests have the tendency to criticize the Indians for their sex lives. Of course, the Jesuit priests arrive in New France with specific categories of sexuality in their brain, just like all of us do. And Indian sexual behavior to the Jesuits looks like sin, to be condemned. Now, how does the middle ground operate here to alleviate this tension a bit? Well, the French settlers are very good at acquiring Indian wives and raising French and Indian families. Much better at this, I would say, than the English, for instance. All the English want from the Indians is their land. The French, however, tend to create a mixed society that alleviates some of the sexual tension brought about by Jesuit criticisms. And then finally, war. The two sides don't fight the same, do they? I remember as a kid growing up, you play cowboys and Indians. Everybody wants to be the Indians because you get to climb trees and ambush and sneak around and hide. And Europeans fight in a way that to the Indians seems absurd. And you can all picture this. You've all seen movies of it. European armies line up in rank and aim and fire on the order of an officer. And they do it out in a big open field without cover. Often two lines facing each other 100 yards apart and blasting away with volleys of fire at each other. The Indians look at this and say, what are you, crazy? You want me to stand in an open field with no cover while 1,000 of your men shoot at me? No thanks. The Indian idea of fighting is to kill the enemy where he finds him. I'll kill you as you sleep on the trail at night. I'll poison your well, burn down your house, steal your horses. I'll kill you where I find you. But I'm not going to stand in an open field and let 1,000 of your men shoot at me without any cover. So the Europeans, of course, look at the Indian style of fighting and say, well, that's treacherous, that's cowardly, it's not manly. So you can see that the two sides are going to have difficulties here. It's a very famous story, French and Indian War. George Washington, of course, was an officer in the British Empire, and his a contingent of men had with them Indian allies, and they encountered the French enemy, and the French had Indian allies as well. And Washington's men won the battle and had a number of POWs. And Washington was shocked to find that these POWs had been scalped by his own Indian allies. He regarded this as dishonorable. And you can see that the two sides view different aspects of war quite differently. The Indians will in time begin to understand and realize the value of a chain of command, of supply, and things like that. And of course, the Europeans, the colonists, will appreciate in time the stealth and the deception that the Indians bring to the battlefield. And you can see quite often during the Revolutionary War, the American colonists will adapt Indian tactics against British regulars. So here are 4 ways in which the middle ground operates in war, sex, justice, and in trade. So this is the lecture I'm going to do on European imperialism. Again, we're at the end of the semester here, and I just wanted to touch on a couple of consequences of the Columbian Exchange. So our next lecture we'll look at Atlantic slavery for a bit. And I appreciate your attention. Thank you.